Hello everyone, welcome to Keen Ear. So I'm back after an extended break from making videos with this very Beatley collection update video. But I'm going to start off with something not by the Beatles at all, in fact the Rolling Stones. It's this book that I was given somewhat recently as a present by someone. It's called Rolling Through the Stones. It's by Keno or Kino. And through reading this book I learned that he is an American lifelong fan of the Stones who in 1998 set up a fan website. And I guess the information that he accumulated over the years, he sort of channeled into this book. And some of it I found pretty interesting, some of it I didn't. Some of it was a very sort of, it's sort of information you can kind of get from really any one of tens of thousands of Rolling Stones fans from around the world, quite honestly. Stuff about, sneaking into a gig, in the 1970s, stuff about trying to get tickets, struggling and that kind of ordeal and being in the front row, near to the band and all that kind of stuff while they're performing, and all that sort of stuff. And I kind of could have done without that, but there was stuff in here which I did find pretty interesting, stuff that was very much like forum threads and discussion topics, stuff like, who wrote what and why various members of the Stones left, Mick Taylor and Brian Jones and all that, and that sort of stuff, and I found that kind of quite a lot more interesting. And obviously, this is not it's not an official book. It's not endorsed by the Rolling Stones or anything like that. It's very much from the outside looking in as a fan's perspective, and but it's still valid. As you just got to take, I guess, a slightly bigger pinch of salt with everything that's said than you would if it was like an official book and that kind of thing. Although I haven't said that, I've read the Keith Richards autobiography, and there's certain things in that which is debatable to say the least. So yeah, even from the horse's mouth, there's certain things that you don't necessarily take at face value and that sort of thing. And but when it's something like this, you've got to not take it at face value. But it's still an interesting read, and I did enjoy some of the topics, and it kind of dated itself a little bit when I got to a fairly extended section about the rock and roll circus that the Rolling Stones put on in the late '60s, which was going to be a TV special, and it never got shown, and it kind of existed very much as as an underground film, in the bootleg, industry and that kind of thing. It was sort of in the black market, and then it got officially released somewhat recently. And a lot of the information, I guess, from that is kind of a bit obsolete because you can easily access that film now very easily and legally, and it's not as such as an underground thing as it once was. But anyway, fairly interesting, but mainly for the more die-hard Rolling Stones fan who's maybe read everything, is maybe looking just for something extra to tide them over for a little bit. So that's that. We'll move on to the next non-Beatles related item, which is this album from Prince. It's called Lotus Flower. Came out in 2009 and had a strange release. Back then, it's only had one release, I believe, and it came out physically in America and in France, and that was kind of it. I believe they're the only two territories that it saw a physical release. Everywhere else, you had to get a download. So I imported this copy from, got it on eBay. I got it imported from America, and it was the cheapest copy that I could find, literally at that point. And I was curious to check out because I did hear some good things about it, and I can say that this is a good album, a set of albums, should I say, that is definitely a strong contender for the Prince estate to re-release sort of slash release, depending on where you live in the world, of course. And yeah, there's some good stuff on here. It's three CDs in total, but unlike something like Emancipation, which was a very long single album, this is actually three individual albums put together in one package, and only Prince could do this. Prince had some strange releases at this time, and this is one of the stranger ones. And if you look at his albums from around this period, some of his albums got physical releases, some of them didn't, some of them were mail order, some of them were download only, some of them were only available from a certain place at a certain time, and it was kind of a bit confusing. So there's a lot of stuff that is kind of due to be put out again and given like an international proper release. But anyway, the first album this has is from actually from Prince. It's a non-Prince album. It's Bria Valente, and it's called Alexia. It's her debut album, and she was Prince's girlfriend at the time. And this album has Prince's fingerprints really all over it. I guess like Bria Valente, it's got his fingerprints all over her back in 2009. But yeah, it's a strong, well, somewhat strong album really. I think it's called a strong album. It's a bit of a over exaggeration, but it's a fairly good pop album from around the time. Female vocal pop album, some good production on it, and it's all some good songs as well. So yeah, it kind of gets the pass from me, although it's not obviously a proper Prince album, but it's a curio of it's kind of like a deeper dive into Prince's back catalogue. But this album in the middle, this is really the main event. This is Prince's Lotus Flower, and this is it's effectively a rock album. Prince albums are very hard to categorize because he's so diverse. His music. But this is mostly a rock album. The electric guitar is never too far away from being played on this album, and some really good stuff. Prince goes into full Hendrix mode and at times, and yeah, it's a strange album in places, and it's got lots of things going on. It's quite a coherent album as well. It feels like it is a proper Prince album rather than. I've noticed that some Prince albums from later years, they tend to feel like a compilation of tracks, but this does feel like an actual cohesive album with middle, beginning, and end, and that kind of thing. And there's also some really really good instrumental tracks on here as well. So yeah, that's something that's well worth checking out if you can. And hopefully one day, it's easier to do that physically, but you might have to check her out on downloads and that kind of things, streaming services. But the final Prince album on here is called MPL Sound, sorry, and it's effectively a Minneapolis sound, and it's more of a standard Prince album from this period. It's not quite as good as the other album I just talked about, but it's still pretty good, and there's still good stuff on it. And it's interesting. I was listening to it today, and Prince sings about getting older, and the songs about him not appreciating. Later, there's a song called "Old School Company," where he's basically accusing modern day music, I guess from 2009, of being a bit bland and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting listen to hear about his take on certain things, and there's some good stuff on it. There's a song called "No More Candy for You," which is it's almost like a Little Richard-esque almost, track, big production and everything. So yeah, there's definitely some gems on here if you're looking for a Prince project to make a strong playlist out of. You definitely don't want to overlook here. There's some good stuff and some surprisingly good stuff that you wouldn't necessarily expect from Prince as well. So yeah, well worth checking out if you can. So we'll move on now to everything else is going to be Beatles or Beatles related, and this is Help. I found this on this Blu-ray in a second-hand shop over in Liverpool, and yeah, I saw it there and I thought, I haven't seen this film in so long. I've been meaning to watch it for literally years and years, and I just never, just passed up any slight opportunity that I have to see it. And I thought, I'm not going to pass it up again. I'm going to buy this thing, and yeah, I don't think I'd seen this film prior to picking this up since about the 1990s, and I kind of really enjoyed it. I really, it did surprised me how much I enjoyed this film. It's a very fun film, very zany film. It raises the spirits. It's not a film you can watch when you're grumpy or anything like that. And I really do feel like the Beatles tried to replicate the zaniness for a Magical Mystery Tour. It was their next film project, and I guess they maybe overestimated or maybe underestimated, should I say, the abilities of the director, Richard Lester, and I guess his crew and all that, because when it came to Magic on Mystery Tour, that was a bit of a farce. That film, how it was made and everything, sort of thrown together, and I guess they didn't appreciate how tricky it is to make even a kind of a zany comedy. And I guess they thought they knew how it was all how to do everything, and how to play the game. And when it came down to it, they kind of really didn't, and they just about got away with it. But yeah, this is a lot of fun. I really do quite like it, and I happily watch it again. It comes with this nice uh, slipcase, and the picture quality's been restored and the sound's been restored. It sounds and looks fantastic, and there's nice special features in it, unlike the Get Back release we've had recently. So they've actually bothered to put at least one special feature, on it. So and this actually has a few, and they're worth watching as well. It's quite interesting, and yeah, it's got all posters from around the world in there. And yeah, this is just a nice, a higher quality Beatles product than you got from Disney, Mickey the Rat. And it comes with this little booklet as well, which is nice. And there's some nice photographs in there. And the text that is, accompanies it is written by none other than Martin Scorsese. So yeah, top quality, absolutely fantastic quality throughout, sort of faultless quality really. And if you see a copy of it and you're looking for something, you're looking for a nice version of this film, you can't really go better than this. I don't think there's been a better version of it in the world of sort of authentic and the bootleg editions that have probably been out numerous times. So this is the version to get, I can say with some degree of confidence, although I'm far from an expert, quite honestly. So we'll move on to some solo Beatles stuff, and we're going to start off with some Paul McCartney cassette tapes. First one is this. This is Pipes of Peace, an album that quite recently, somewhat recently anyway, Richard McCook was talking about in one of his videos. And he was explaining that he felt like certain people out there, they generally highly regard the album that came out prior to this, which is Tug of War, and yeah, they sort of disregard this album as it's an inferior sort of album really, and he didn't quite understand that, because he feels like the album's a lot more closer than most people kind of make out in terms of quality. I agree with him after listening to this album. I think this is not. There's no sort of disparaging, level of quality between the two. Quite honestly, it's kind of very debatable over which one is better than the other one. Really, I need more time to sort of formulate my ideas. But yeah, I think they're both as quite as good as each other. Really, quite honestly, without giving too much of my ranking video of solo Beatles albums, which I'm going to be making soon. I've got a couple more Paul McCartney albums to go, a few more George Harrison. They're kind of a way you go, really. I think by the time I make another collection update video, I'll probably got all the albums I need sewn up. And in terms of Prince as well, obviously I'm not going to be including Prince on the solo Beatles albums collection sort of ranking video, or when I make one for Prince, I'm kind of pretty close on obtaining all the albums I need for like 2 or 3 more albums, something like that. But anyway, yes, decent 1980s Paul McCartney album. I kind of do like it. I like the collaborations as well, with Michael Jackson and everything like that. I think it's got some good stuff on it. We'll move on to this. This is not regarded as a good Paul McCartney album by any means. It's probably regarded by many as his weakest album. It's Press to Play from 1986, and I haven't necessarily listened to this album a whole heap of times, because the copy I have here on cassette is one of the issues you get with tapes, unfortunately, is that the tape can dry out if it's not stored properly and that kind of thing, and you can have problems playing it back, squeaks and that kind of thing. And that's what I've had with this. It's kind of a problematic format, shall we say, particularly when it's over 35 years old at this point. So yeah, I've had a few issues playing this. I've treated it with silicone spray, which I've heard can work on it. But yeah, I've played it through a few times, so it's not completely ruined or anything like that. And yeah, it's not it's not a strong Paul McCartney. There's some very weak, suspect stuff on this, but it's not a washout either. There is some good stuff here and there as well. So yeah, I need more time to formulate my ideas how good their album is and where it belongs in the ranking video. But I can say with some degree of confidence, it's not going to be near the top. It's not going to be beating, Imagine and all Things Must Pass or anything like that. So we'll move on to this album. This is Run Devil Run, again by Paul McCartney, 1999. A lot of these albums I'm picking up on eBay for buttons really, and this is an album mostly of cover songs. There is a few Paul McCartney, pen songs, but mostly covers, mostly songs, of the rock and roll sort of genre from the 50s, early 60s, and that kind of thing. And yeah, it's got a lot of energy on it. Really, really good covers. It kind of is what it is. You kind of know what you kind of expect. The debate of this album, though, is whether it's better than John Lennon's Rock and Roll. One of the Rock and Roll cover album that he made. This is Paul McCartney's, I guess, equivalent of that. And yeah, I'm still not decided which one's better yet. That's something I'm going to need more time working out. But anyway, move on to this. This is Memory Almost Full, and this came out, let me get the date right, 2007. It's one of those Daily Mail copies, unfortunately. You kind of, beggars can't be choosers, I guess. I did have my eye actually on a special deluxe edition of this with 2 CDs and all that kind of stuff, the DVD, I believe, and that kind of thing. And in the end, I went for this, just out of pure cheapness, really. This is like £1.20, I think, including postage, and that sort of thing from eBay. And the other one was considerably more expensive, and maybe I should have gone for the more expensive one because I actually do quite like this album a fair amount, without giving too much away, of course, about the ranking video. But this isn't going to be near the bottom, shall we say. It's got some good stuff on here. I think it's one of Paul's stronger albums. It's strange as well. Paul's quite unique in the sense that a lot of his stuff that he's putting out, this isn't obviously a new album, but I'm talking about all the albums he's sort of made post sort of 2000, I suppose, or even post 2005. They seem to be a lot stronger than the stuff he was putting out in the 80s. It's kind of crazy, really, how it's usually the opposite. The stuff made in the past is stronger, but not with Paul. He kind of defies that, really. He's sort of superhuman. And this kind of backs up what I just said, really. This is Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. 2005, again, this is an eBay pickup, very cheap indeed. And yeah, a bit of a singer-songwriter element to this album. It's a bit more of a stripped back production, what you typically get with Paul McCartney. Quite a classy album as well, I feel. It's got like this lovely little, I don't know why I like this so much, it's sort of bit of card or whatever it is in the CD case there, a bit shiny, almost like I'm a magpie attracted to shininess. But whatever, it's a nice quality album, this, and yeah, again, another step towards, a complete Paul McCartney or semi-complete, collection. As complete as kind of I want it to be, really. So we'll move on to the final thing I'm going to be showing, and it's George Harrison's Extra Texture, or Read All About It. It's kind of got two titles, this album. I picked this up on eBay, the first vinyl record actually I picked up on eBay in many a long time. It's been a long while since I bought anything from eBay on vinyl, and yeah, I've just never seen this album in the wild. The only times I've seen this album out there, quite honestly, is the newish. When George Harrison's back catalogue got reissued on vinyl. I can't remember exactly when it was, but when that was doing the rounds, which is now out of print. That's when I saw this album. I've never seen an original copy, from the 1970s ever in any record fair or any record shop ever. It's just never come up with it. And if it has, it maybe slipped by me or whatever. Just never caught sight of it. But anyway, this is an original copy from 1975, a UK copy with this lovely sort of textured sleeve. And one thing I found out about some of George Harrison albums is that picking them up even on CD is kind of very tricky. In certain cases, you're better off picking them up on vinyl than you are CD. A lot of his stuff has been out of print for a long time, and it's just not easy to get your hands on. You think of all, you think of all the bands out there with they're very small by comparison to the Beatles, and you can get their stuff a lot easier than you can George's stuff. It's strange the way it is really the situation. And we've got the label here. It's I like the apple, the apple that's been eaten. That's kind of a nice little George Harrison sense of humour there. And you got the inner sleeve here. Oh no, or him again. Typical mid 1970s inner sleeve, made out of sandpaper cardboard. But yeah, it's a fairly nice copy of this album. Kind of happy with it really. And yeah, it's some good stuff on here. I was first introduced to this album by me, Mr. Mayo. He introduced me to a lot of solo Beatles albums, particularly the more obscure stuff such as this. It's not particularly well known, solo Beatles or even George Harrison album. But this is, he kind of, didn't have much praise for it. He kind of didn't have a lot of time for it. He kind of called it very dull and just not particularly fun album, which kind of says something about me really, because I kind of like this album, I guess, to a certain extent. I like it more than him. Don't think it's a particularly great album though. I think side one of this album is pretty damn strong. Side two kind of is weakens there a bit, and I feel with George Harrison albums that if they had maybe two extra good, better tracks, if you drop two of the weaker tracks and just add two stronger tracks, the albums would be a lot stronger. Just that little extra would make such a big difference. It would turn a fairly somewhat mediocre album or somewhat just pretty good album to just that extra level of quality. But it's still a strong album. And weirdly enough, listening to this may sound a bit crazy saying this, but one of the albums this reminded me of, listening to this properly for the first time, is David Bowie's Young Americans, which came out around the same time, and they both have this kind of American feel. Both were recorded in America, both by British artists. And this was recorded in LA. This album, and yeah, it's got this kind of very particular tracks, really lovely production actually on certain tracks. The instrumentation and everything is just fantastic. And yeah, it does sound a noticeable different to other George Harrison albums that I've kind of listened to, which I generally feel like I might get this wrong, but I feel like a lot of them were recorded in the UK. This is one of the exceptions, I guess, or one of a few exceptions that was recorded in America. But anyway, before I enrage any George Harrison, Beatles fanatics out there who point out, oh, this album was recorded in America, this album was recorded, you don't know what you're talking about. Before I go any further with that, we'll just wrap this video up. So yeah, thanks for watching this video. And I've got a few more videos planned in the future. Obviously, you've got as I've gone on about constantly in all these videos, a ranking video for the solo Beatles, a few more handful of albums to get. I've got the Prince ranking video coming up soon. I've nearly got all of his albums. There's a few videos I've got in mind that I want to make. Even though I haven't been making videos, I've been thinking about what videos I want to make, and got a bit of a backlog of what I want to do. So yeah, thanks for watching everyone, and see you soon.